Watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Now, shortly, we are going to be giving you a very special D-Day ceremony live here on this show. But before that, tonight, there's an individual being carried into a police van here. Shouts of shame on you. Migrant madness. Remember those protests over Rwanda? Well, now civil servants are taking the government to court.
They're going down in the sun, and in the morning we will remember them.
Rishi Sunak skips a D-Day ceremony. Has he let our war heroes down? And
I've done it before. I'll do it again. I'll surprise everybody. Thank you.
Reform draws level with the Conservatives in one poll, plus
can make the commitment that income tax and national insurance won't go up under a Labour government.
Have Labour been honest about your tax bill? I grill a Labour shadow minister and you will not believe his answer to this question. If you did have a loved one who was on an NHS waiting list, would you advise them to go private? What is Joe Biden doing here as well? He's being urged to just resign or take a cognitive test. He makes the D-Day veterans look sprightly, doesn't he? Grief. On my panel tonight, it is Tory peer Lord Bailey, political commentator Suzanne Evans, and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. And do you know what's going on here? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. It is absolute migrant chaos. Next.
At just after 9 o'clock, the latest GB News. The world's marked today 80 years since D-Day, with His Majesty the King and the US President Joe Biden among leaders who travelled to Normandy in France to join veterans for commemorations. Joe Biden took aim at Vladimir Putin in his speech in France, comparing the events of the Second World War to the situation now between Russia and Ukraine. King Charles paid tribute to those who'd made it home for their bravery and sacrifice alongside their perished colleagues.
It is with the most profound sense of gratitude that we remember them and all those who served at that critical time. We recall the lesson that comes to us again and again across the decades. free nations must stand together to oppose tyranny.
Well, here in the UK, hundreds of D-Day beacons are due to be lit up across the country tonight. Let's take you live right now to Portsmouth, where in less than 15 minutes, the first beacon will be lighting up at His Majesty's Naval Base. That's spreading right across the country this evening. Elsewhere today, in Northern Ireland, Lisbon's town crier delivered a D-Day proclamation from the town balcony. And in Scunthorpe, personnel there also marked the anniversary of the largest seaborne invasion in military history with a march past. Meanwhile, the Princess Royal joined Chelsea pensioners at the Royal Chelsea Hospital in London for a special D-Day event there. And commemorations were also taking place in Worksop in Nottinghamshire, where military personnel presented wreaths for the fallen. Now, despite those D-Day commemorations in France, around 80 migrants attempted to cross the English Channel this morning. But their boat got into difficulty about 10 miles off the coast of Kent, with dozens of people reported to be in the water. A rescue mission was launched by the Coast Guard, the RNLI and UK Border Force officials, including helicopter support. Among those brought ashore were 3 children, including a baby. It comes as new Home Office figures reveal that more than 7,500 migrants arrived in the UK by small boats in the first 4 months of this year. That's the highest level since records began. Also in the news tonight, Prince Harry has been given the green light to appeal a High Court ruling over the police protection team that accompanies him when he's in the UK. Earlier this year, the Duke of Sussex lost his legal challenge against a Home Office decision to change his level of personal security when he visits. His lawyers argued that he'd been singled out, but the High Court said there'd been no procedural unfairness. Now, at least 37 people have been admitted to hospital today after a sudden wave of E. coli infections. The condition causes severe diarrhoea as well as stomach cramps and a fever. The UK Health Security Agency says most of the cases reported across the country are part of a single outbreak and, mysteriously, saying they're likely to be from a popular item of food, but giving no further information as to what that item is. And a major search operation's underway on the Greek island of Symi tonight after the TV nutritionist Dr. Michael Mosley went missing. It's understood he was out on a walk but didn't come back to his accommodation. The 67-year-old is best known for appearing on programmes like ITV's This Morning and BBC's The One Show. An appeal has been launched urging anyone who spots him to get in touch with local police. Boeing's new Starliner capsule carrying its first ever NASA crew has docked safely with the International Space Station, intensifying competition with Elon Musk's SpaceX. Let's show you live pictures from inside the International Space Station, where they're currently posing for photographs, rather pleased with themselves. Veteran astronauts Barry Wilmore and Sunita Williams arrived after their 27-hour flight on board the capsule named Calypso. And back on Earth, just hours before, Elon Musk's giant Starship rocket named Super Heavy survived a fiery hypersonic return from space, completing a full test mission around the globe on the rocket's 4th attempt. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome along. It is Thursday, the 6th of June, and it is, of course, a huge day in our nation's calendar. In the next 10 minutes or so, we will cross live to Portsmouth as the D-Day ceremonies continue, and the first of 800 special beacons will be lit right across the UK. I think we can show you some live pictures of this now as they are doing a prayer before they light these beacons. Yes, so it's going to be 800 special beacons as those D-Day ceremonies commence. We saw them a little bit earlier on, didn't we, on the other side of the channel as those war veterans and war heroes there got very, very emotional, and dignitaries from around the world and world leaders paid tribute, unless we forget. But we will take that live as it happens. This is obviously an incredibly important thing because every single year, unfortunately, there are fewer and fewer people who were alive on that day. Last night on this very show, Ellie Costello, the wonderful Ellie Costello, was in Normandy for us, speaking to a lady who was just 5 years old when, at Pegasus Bridge, the very first Allied troops were airdropped in, and they liberated her house. It was the first house in France liberated. Jury very passionately about why she does a champagne toast to the Allied troops every single year. And one thing that I think really warmed everybody's hearts, and I know I got a lot of emails about this and people commenting at GB News, gbnews.com/your say, to say how many younger people there actually were out there. And that was really important, something that I can't help but wonder whether or not we are missing that in this country. What I'm going to do in a second for you now is hopefully bring in a little bit of sound from this event that we've got here going on in Portsmouth. There you go. OK, so if you are just joining us here on Patrick Christys tonight, it's a very different start to the show. We are having a look here at a ceremony, the lighting of the beacons. That's in Portsmouth at the moment. They're going to be lighting beacons across the country to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day. So this is what we are taking now. The Allied liberation of Europe has actually been celebrated by veterans and families now over the course of the last few days. I believe this is a flyover that we are seeing at the moment. It is indeed. Thousands of troops from across the world did storm those beaches in Normandy today, 80 years ago, to free Europe from Nazi oppression. Earlier on GB News, we saw the King speaking. We saw other world leaders. Emmanuel Macron was there. Zelensky was there as well, wasn't he? President Biden was there briefly. Unfortunately, Rishi Sunak left to come home to campaign. Keir Starmer was there. A lot of people do think that that was actually a quite bad mistake from Rishi Sunak. But what we're witnessing now is the lighting of a beacon here. And beacons will light up across the coastline, including the Channel Islands, the Isle of Man, and in UK overseas territories, as well as 5 beaches in Normandy. The beacon actually contains sand from the 5 Normandy beaches that the Allies landed on, and it will be lit by Bruno Peak OBE. So that is the gentleman that you are looking at now. So that's what we are witnessing now. And that beacon, I think, will be lit any moment now. Welsh troops have also been recognised in ceremonies, as well as those from Scotland and Northern Ireland. The beacons are going to be lit right across the nation. I'm having a look at some of the locations for you now as well. Solihull in the West Midlands, Stapleford in Nottinghamshire, and there we are. That first beacon has been lit in Portsmouth. And it's really important, I think, as a country that we do mark these occasions because, like I was saying, every single year, sadly, there are fewer and fewer people who had that lived experience of the absolute horrors, not just of D-Day, but of a war of that scale. And I think when we forget that, and you look at, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but it's true, you look at some polling data that we brought you yesterday that showed 54% of people aged 18 to 24 in Britain right now do not think that countries like Israel have a right to exist. And you compare and contrast that with the gentleman who is sitting in that wheelchair now, who was a part of D-Day, what he fought against, what he fought to give us. And it is so vitally important that we do not forget the ultimate sacrifice that such a brave number of people were able to do for the likes of us. So that is one of many beacons that is going to be lit right across the country. In Birmingham, we've got some others in the West Midlands as well as North East Derbyshire. There's one in Leicestershire. There's two in Leicestershire, actually, one in Warwickshire. And like I said as well, they're even going to be on the Isle of Man and some of our other overseas territories. Should we just take a little listen into some of the music in the background here? OK, so that was Portsmouth Naval Base, where the principal beacon is being lit to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Over the course of the evening, like I was saying, beacons will be lit right across the country, on the Channel Islands, the Isle of Man and other UK overseas territories, as the commemoration of arguably the greatest day, certainly one of the most tragic days in many senses, but the greatest day in many others of Britain's military history and the world's military history is commemorated, and rightly so. Well, I also wanted to draw your attention today to some of the other news stories that you might have missed. And there has been absolute immigration madness today. There's reports that the French police are using tear gas on the beaches of Calais as they try and failed to keep control of illegal migrants looking to set sail for Britain. Then a boat capsized in the Channel. Around 80 migrants had to be, arrested initially and helped out in an operation that included 2 helicopters and multiple lifeboats. There have been no reports of anybody being injured or dying, and you are watching footage of them being brought to shore there. As all of this is going on and our borders continue to be inundated with people from goodness knows where on a daily basis, there is another travesty taking place, though. So our civil service has now taken the government to court over the Rwanda plan. The union representing civil servants is arguing that if the ECHR decides a Rwanda flight can't take off, then civil servants must do what that foreign court tells them, even if our government asks them to ignore that ruling. The government's legal team are arguing that our domestic law is sovereign, and it is that law that civil servants are paid by the taxpayer to enforce. So look, to summarise, there's been reports of tear gas and violence on the beaches of France today. 80 people capsized and had to be rescued in the Channel. A massive rescue operation there, 2 helicopters in the sky and everything. And our civil service has taken the government to court so they don't have to do what the government wants them to do to protect our borders. Well, at the leaders' debate, Rishi Sunak said this, didn't he?
I'm forced to choose between securing our borders and our country's security or a foreign court. I'm going to choose our country's security every single time.
OK, well, Sir Keir Starmer said this.
We will not pull out of international agreements and international law, which is respected the world over.
Well, I want to ask you, which one do you prefer? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. It is Conservative peer Lord Bailey. I've also got political commentator Susan Evans and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larsden. Look, a bit of a different start to the show there, everybody, so we are late getting to you, but I think for good reason. Lord Bailey, I'll start with you. I mean, the civil service taking the government to court to say that they don't really want to adhere to the law of our land, I find that quite astonishing.
There's 2 things I'd say about this. The civil servants union should be ashamed of themselves, right? Because this is the election period. Let's be clear, what they're doing, you could argue, is the right thing to do. Somebody needs to clear up who is in charge, our government or the Europeans. But the point is, the civil service union should not be doing that in this point of purdah. It feels political. And if the civil servants union behaves politically, they should be banned. That's the first thing. This is very, very important for the country, because if the government wins this case, they can stay in the ECHR and and still administer the law in this country. I think Rishi Sunak was correct. Our law should take primacy. I wonder how the French feel about it, or the Italians. Yes, we should have an international legal system, but not above the one that is voted for by the democracy of your own nation.
Yeah, I'm going to show you a little clip later on of just how seriously the French seem to take their own border security, actually. Absolutely remarkable stuff. Suzanne, I'll come to you on this. Is the civil service just engaging before our very eyes in overt political, open borders action?
Yeah, I think they are. There's no doubt about it. You know, I remember when the EU referendum vote was won by the Leave side, there were reports that the Foreign Office staff were in tears, absolutely distraught that we were going to leave Europe as they saw it. Of course, we weren't leaving Europe at all. We were just leaving the club that was really not in our best interest. But I think, and I've known people in the civil service who talk about the overt politicisation that's going on now, and it's very much a left-wing politicisation. So I totally agree with Sean on this. They shouldn't be doing it in the election period. They shouldn't be doing it in Purdah. It's in a sense a mutiny, I think, against the government that they are paid to support and paid to roll out the policies that the government wants.
You know, Keir Starmer famously said that he'd rather be in Davos than Westminster, didn't he? Now he'd rather adhere to a foreign court than the courts of this land. Is he just a globalist?
Well, I'll tell you what, I find it actually offensive for the Prime Minister to call it a foreign court. It's not a foreign court, it's an international court. It's one of his lies, many lies that he told in the debate. It is an international court of which we were the authors of its existence. We saw the incredibly moving images there from Portsmouth and from throughout the day. It was created in the aftermath of the Second World War to ensure that the standards of human rights were upheld, and it was an idea of Winston Churchill's. It was the larger absolutely, and it has developed over time. And there are, and you know, it's the idea that this is what's stopping the government sorting the migrant crisis. It's just nonsense, because it isn't what's stopping the government stopping the migrant crisis.
This is deeper than that. I accept that there's other things to be looked at in the migrant crisis, but all of a sudden the Labour Party have adopted this very patriotic look at how we've formed Europe. Let's be very clear. You're only supporting this because it supports your own political outcome. No. If we need... I'm not for leaving, but if we need to leave to enforce our own legal system, we should step off. It's disgraceful. You know fully well politically to achieve different ends. It was set up to keep Europe safe. It currently is doing the opposite.
Sean, you know full well that this government has got zero intention of leaving. It is once again lying to voters, as it has done every election where it claims it might leave. It's got no intention of leaving. Either leave or go.
You simply don't know that. And
yes, we do know that. Because it will completely unravel the Northern Irish peace agreement, which they're not prepared to do, because it's built into the...
Needs must. When we set this up...
OK, so we're going to restart war in Northern Ireland.
This up, it was seismic for the world, right? It was important, yeah?
Absolutely.
And continues to be so. And if it's misused, then it might need to be changed, even if it's seismic for the world.
Do you think that Keir Starmer's right to say that we should be prioritising international law?
No, I don't. Absolutely not. I think it is time to take back control in a different way. We've taken back control from Europe. I think it's now time to take back control of our Supreme Court. Matthew, you're quite right. We helped set this up. It's no longer fit for purpose. We can do very well without it.
We're joining Russia and Belarus as the only countries in Europe who aren't in it. Well, because they're not in Europe, Suzanne.
No, they don't have to be in Europe. It doesn't matter.
It's about the Europe. It's about, and I think today of all days we should remember what brings us.
How they feel about our role in Europe. Exactly. I think they're quite happy with it.
And also, the idea that it's an alternative, Patrick, between being in the ECHR and sorting out the migrant crisis. We need to sort out the migrant crisis. We need to stop the boats. We need to smash the gangs. The Tories aren't doing it, and they're blaming somebody else for their failure.
In the ECHR, or we're a rebel, ghastly, nasty nation.
It's a complete false story.
OK, we're going to have to draw a line under it. One thing I will say is that the optics of the commemorations that we saw on those beaches today around Normandy, the lighting of the beacon that I've just shown you in Portsmouth, and the absolute madness that we have just seen in the English Channel today. You know, tear gas on the beaches, boats coming across, capsizing, the civil service in the courts trying to stop the government taking around to flies. I mean, the contrast there is unbelievable. But look, still to come. Did Rishi Sunak let veterans down today by failing to turn up at the International D-Day event? He missed scenes like this, though, from President Joe Biden.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honourable Lloyd J.
I agree. Plus, the Tories still have around 100 parliamentary seats to fill, and it's quickly becoming a bloodbath. Former Conservative MEP David Campbell-Bannerman joins me to discuss what is fast becoming a general election shambles. But the owner of 2 XL bullies in Ireland was mauled to death by the dogs she loved. Should this be the final straw now for this dangerous breed? Dog trainer John Allison goes head-to-head with former Met detective Peter Blexley. Peter says they should be culled, killed and exterminated. You won't want to miss that.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
D-Day was shrouded in secrecy. Ken Hay was days away from landing in Normandy and still didn't know what was happening.
I don't think we really appreciated what we were going into. Actually, on D-Day, I was on a 30-mile route march, and we see the planes going over and that sort of thing. And we realised that wherever they were going, then we got the news that, in fact, it was Normandy, and we knew we were scheduled for that.
He arrived on Juno Beach at Coursieux-sur-Mer a few days after the main assault. The soldiers' role was to push forward into enemy territory.
I didn't land on D-Day. I landed shortly after in June. I was in the infantry, so I was a rifle and I was up the front.
While on night patrol on July 7th, his unit was attacked.
My brother was a corporal in the same platoon, and he was out with me. He got back. 16 of us out of 30 got back. 5 of us got captured, and 9 got killed.
Germans put him to work in a POW camp in Zabas, Poland. With Soviets advancing, the prisoners were forced to march for 1,000 miles.
At one point along there, my leg was chopped. I lay down in the snow. If it hadn't been for 2 guys who fell back in the column and picked me up, I'd have just gone to sleep and frozen to death. 2 American tanks turned up on the 22nd of April, Sunday afternoon, and we were liberated.
Ken feels pride for the role he played in Normandy and thanks God for keeping him alive.
People say, why did you volunteer for the services? It was a completely different atmosphere then. You did your bit.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Still to come, is the Tory party selection process being marred by personal vendettas and bad blood? It's absolute carnage out there. Former Conservative MEP David Campbell-Bannerman joins me live. But first, after a 23-year-old woman is tragically killed by the dogs she loved, should it be completely illegal now to own an XL bully? It's time for tonight's head-to-head. A young woman in Ireland has been mauled to death by her XL bully, who she had previously described as her baby. Nicole Morey returned home from celebrating her 23rd birthday before she was attacked by 2 of her pet dogs, believed to be XL bullies, who ripped her arm from her body before she passed away. Despite police shooting the dangerous dog 4 times, Nicole's young life could not be saved. Well, in TikTok videos, like the one that you'll be seeing now if you're watching us on TV or YouTube, she had previously posted, "This is my son, and I don't give an F if you think he looks aggressive. I don't give an F if you don't like the look of him, and I certainly don't give an F if you think the breed should be banned." Speaking from Spain, her distraught uncle told the press, "It just goes to show you can't trust dogs. You can't trust any dog, but especially those dogs that are bred to kill." While we have a ban on unregistered XL bullies in the UK, laws in Ireland are much less strict, meaning the breed is restricted but not yet banned. So tonight, look, I am asking, should it be illegal outright to own an XL bully? I know there are a lot of strong views on either side of this, which is why we are debating it. So you have your say, all right? Quite literally, go to gbnews.com/your say, tweet me at GBNews, and while you're there, go and vote in our poll. For what it's worth, I am very torn on this. I think sometimes it's the owner and not the dog, obviously, and it's all about training, but then you do see situations like this one and you think, is it really? Is it maybe just the dog? Going head-to-head on this, our dog trainer at the Canine Way is John Allison and former Met detective Peter Blexley. Look, both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Peter, I believe that you think these dogs just shouldn't exist.
Entirely, and I've been saying this for some time. Here we are yet again discussing the utterly needless loss of yet another life. These stories are happening far too frequently. The licensing of them in the UK was a pointless exercise because you can't tell Rover not to kill someone just because he or she's been licensed. It is time now to round them up and, as humanely as can possibly be done, exterminate them.
Right, it's a strong start. John, how do you respond to that?
Well, I think Peter is so far off the mark when it comes to anything in regards to dogs. And something that's very important to highlight from the outset is that myself and as a dog trainer deals in fact, Peter deals on opinion. And that is very key when we deal in these matters, but they're so specific. Now, you talk about licensing of dogs. It is the owners that we must license. And it's a serious lack of education that is leading to these incidents taking place. They're extremely sad, regardless of the dog breed. We do not want to see any deaths or injuries take place. However, as was said in the video, the treating of a dog as a baby straight away is a lack of education, and it's a negligent behaviour from an owner.
But yeah, OK. We'll just stick with you on this, John, for now, because, you know, you can treat a Chihuahua as a baby, but it's not going to maul you to death, is it?
Well, no, you can't treat a Chihuahua as a baby. All dogs should be treated as dogs and not as humans. They are not humans, and they do not thrive off of being treated as such. Dogs thrive off of structure, rules, discipline, boundaries, limitations. Right. That is what dogs thrive off of.
OK. Peter, you've heard that there. This is about education of the owners and not about the dogs, apparently.
I'm afraid John's kind of naivety for a man who makes a living out of dogs is rather shocking. We live in an age where people carry dogs in handbags, where people push dogs around in prams, where people very much do see them as their babies. But let's not forget, this bully, XL bully breed, was bred in the US, an amalgamation of 2 other breeds, to make it as violent as they possibly could. It unfortunately has found its way to the UK, where lives are being lost on a regular basis, not to mention children and others being mauled by these savage beasts. Until we round them up and exterminate this breed permanently, well, I've been calling for that for some time. My conscience will be clear the next time somebody is killed by one. I wonder if John will be able to say the same.
OK, John, come back to that then. Peter wants to round them up and exterminate them. You would educate the owners of these. I mean, you know, how many more XL bully deaths do we have to have? Can I also ask you, John, as well? I get a bit of stick whenever I talk about this. People can say to me, oh, how do you know they were an XL bully? How do you know they were an XL bully? I mean, is there some truth to that? Does the media sometimes get it wrong and say that certain dogs are XL bullies and actually they're just massive dogs?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of points to take there. Peter refers to me as naive. Just because dogs are carried in handbags, this does not mean that it's okay. And at no point did I reference that as being Okay, so there's the first area I'd like to correct Peter on. The second is these dogs were not bred to be as vicious as possible. If you know the breed history of the American Bully, that it actually has 4 subcategories, the XL is just part of that. They were actually bred to remove the drive of the American Pit Bull Terrier, so actually it was in the opposite to what you say. The other thing I would like to bring up is that these dogs
very
first came to the UK. These dogs came to the UK in 2014, and we had no fatal incidents for the first 6 years. Therefore, the blame lies in the negligence and the irresponsible dog breeding that took place here in the UK during the pandemic and then moving forward from there. I have a very clear and a very effective programme that we could introduce that will deal with...
So you think you could train every single XL bully in the country right now not to kill, John?
Absolutely not. You cannot change genetics of any dog. The genetic makeup of a dog plays a massive part. Well, if a dog is inherently dangerous, and what we like to highlight here as well is that almost all aggression stems from fear. So going back to what I was saying just a second ago, when you are looking at the irresponsible and negligent breeding of these dogs post-2020, this is where the poor breeding was implemented and they started to breed dogs that had nervous tendencies, which is leading to the aggression.
All right, look, very, very quickly and very finally, Peter, to you. Do you not think there might be protests in the streets at Peter Blatchley going door to door, rounding up XL bullies and slotting them?
Well, so be it. But I'm about preserving life. That's what so many of the laws in the land are, to protect people and preserve life, sometimes protect people from their own foolish actions.
And that's where we need to bring in consequence, Peter. That's where consequences come into place.
Okay, well, to John's greater knowledge with regards to the breeding of them, but it just goes to show they need to be killed.
Okay, all right. Well, we're going to leave it there, chaps. We're way over, I'm afraid. Look, thank you very much. It's dog trainer at K9 Way. It's John Allison, a former Met Police detective, Peter Bletchley. Thank you very much. Who do you agree with? Should it be illegal to own an XL bully? I'll just take one of these. Greg on X says no animal is banned. They are not toys or fashion statements. They are bred for a purpose and need to be trained as such. So that's one of your views. 83% of you on our poll think that owning an XL bully should be illegal. 17% of you say that it shouldn't. Look, coming up, the Tories and Reform. Well, they're neck and neck in the latest YouGov poll, believe it or not. But is Farage just playing into the hands of the left-wing Labour Party? That's what the Conservatives would say. And Widdicombe's on shortly. But before that, Conservative Party Chairman Richard Holden said this about his beloved Durham.
No, I am bloody loyal to the North East, Tom. I care about this constituency.
Yeah, now he's going to campaign in Essex, so read into that what you will. Meanwhile, Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross has usurped a colleague who is currently in hospital so that he can run in what is regarded as quite a safe seat. It's utter chaos, and I'll be joined by former Conservative MEP David Campbell-Bannerman to tee off on it. I'll see you in a sec.
Hello and welcome to your evening GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So some rain and showers around, particularly for northern areas tonight, but clear spells as well. We've still got low pressure up to the north of the UK, bringing various secluded fronts across the UK as we go throughout the rest of this evening. But looking at the detail, any showers across England and Wales will slowly fizzle out this evening, leaving plenty of clear spells. That's going to help those temperatures drop into the low single figures, and we could even see a touch of grass frost in some rural spots tonight. Across northwest Scotland, though, there's a band of heavy rain making its way southeastwards as we go into the early hours of Friday. And along with this, we will see some quite strong blustery winds. So it'll make for quite a wet commute across much of Scotland on Friday morning, with that heavy rain making its way southeastwards, feeling pretty chilly in those blustery winds as well. As we look further south, we have got some clearer skies to start the day, so some brightness, particularly further south across southeast England, but also a few showers, particularly across the southwest, and they will make their way southeastwards as we go through Friday morning. That band of rain across Scotland will also make its way southeastwards into England as we go into Friday afternoon, fizzling out a little bit and just breaking up into showers as it makes its way southeastwards, but introducing a bit more in the way of cloud into parts of England and Wales. Heavy and frequent showers, though, developing behind this across northwest Scotland. We could see a bit of hail and the odd rumble of thunder in those, but feeling pretty pleasant further south with highs of 18 to 20. Now, if we look at what this weekend has to bring, a bit more in the way of cloud to start the weekend on Saturday compared to what we're going to see on Friday morning. It's not quite as chilly a start. A few showers to start the day, but generally clearing away to the southeast into the early afternoon, and further frequent heavy showers across Scotland, and that will continue throughout the weekend, but some uncertainty as we head into the new week.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Well, look, the Tory party chairman, Richard Holden, has been forced to deny accusations that he orchestrated a selection stitch-up after he was remarkably handed a safe seat in Essex after his former constituency in the North East was abolished. Holden was the only candidate up for selection in Basildon and Billericay, and his candidacy provoked a fierce backlash, with the leader of the Tory group on Basildon Council, Andrew Baggott, claiming, "I will not be campaigning for somebody that is being imposed upon us." The location of Holden's new seat has also raised eyebrows, not least after he made this bold claim back in February.
About trying to find a safer seat, isn't it, somewhere else in the country for yourself, rather than being loyal to the North East?
No, I am bloody loyal to the North East, Tom. I care about this constituency. I fought for them every day since 2019. They've never had a constituency MP who works harder.
And now he's going to Basildon. And Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross sparked outrage earlier today after he seized the candidacy from former Minister David Duckett, who is currently in hospital recovering from a spinal injury.
Fortunately, and with real regret, the party management board concluded that David could not proceed as our candidate for the new seat of Aberdeenshire North and Murray East. I've decided I need to lead from the front. So this evening, I will put myself forward for nomination as the Scottish Conservative candidate.
But Duckett has hit back now at these claims, insisting that despite being in hospital, he is fit to run this election. Well, it comes as the Tories are scrambling to find, still, by the way, around 100 seats before tomorrow's deadline. I'm joined now by former Conservative MEP David Campbell Bannerman. David, this is an absolute mess, isn't it?
I'm afraid it is, Patrick, and it's entirely cynical. I think it's corrupt, the process, the system is corrupt, because what they're doing is parachuting in, I know it's D-Day today, they're parachuting in all these special advisors and basically mates of number 10, mates of the Prime Minister. And it's so insulting to all the activists and members around the country who work so hard, and they're getting all these people that know very little about actually campaigning, being dropped in all seats all the way around the country.
I mean, it's jobs for the boys, by the sounds of it.
It's chumocracy, I call it, and It's very corrupting, but, you know, Central Office has so much power now. They've taken all the power away from the members, and they can't actually choose their own candidates, which they used to do in the old days. I mean, I stood in Tunbridge Wells years ago against Archie Norman, and there were like 200 applicants there. And now you're getting safe seats like Basildon and Billericay with one candidate being put forward, or three. They've left it deliberately to the last moment. It's cynical, because then they can rush it and use emergency measures, including only 3 names going forward. And one of those names is the favoured candidate, often a special advisor.
Yeah, and some of these special advisors, for example, Will Tanner in Bury St Edmunds. Bury St Edmunds is what, if you can even say anything is a safe seat at this election, is something at least resembling one. Large majority there, Brexit backing. Well, this guy, with respect, is barely even a household name in his own home, voted Remain, and now he's chucked in. And is this not the exact reason why, and I hate to say this to you, David, the Tories might get a kicking?
Well, it doesn't help, and I want the Conservatives to do well in this election. You know, Labour's a terrible threat, let's make that clear. But as you say, this really doesn't help. And Will Tanner's another one. He's Deputy Chief of Staff to Rishi Sunak. And there's been allegations that the membership database was being used to help him, allegedly, from the constituency, and not the others. Now, I don't know. Let's see what happens. But there really needs to be an inquiry into this whole process.
But it's like the Tories aren't the ones who called the election, though, isn't it?
Well, it's a bit like that. But as I say, what they do, cynically, is they leave it so late, 190 seats left so late, a lot of safe seats coming up. They actually got MPs to leave it till the last moment so they can use emergency procedures to force through their own candidates. That's the way it works. And Basildon, you know, we knew the MP was going in October last year, and that constituency has tried to get in a new MP ever since October, and they had meetings in January, I understand. And lo and behold, here we are, mad panic, you know, 48 hours before nominations, which go in tomorrow. And you've got one candidate being pushed forward.
Who happens to be the Tory party chairman as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm afraid what this does, it just creates a huge morale problem, just at the point when they're trying to unify and fight Labour. And that is really critical. So, once again, I'm afraid over-centralisation is destroying the party. And after this election, we've got to clear out Central Office and we've got to start again because, you know, this is totally unacceptable. It is corrupt. I don't use that word lightly, but it is a corrupt system and it's got to stop now because this is embarrassing.
All right, well, I appreciate you coming on, as I always do, sticking your head above the parapet and, you know, shooting from the hip on stuff like this. I do now have to read out the full list of people who have declared their candidacy in Basildon and Billericay. So we've got Alex Harrison from the Labour Party, Richard Holden from the Conservative Party, Stuart Goshawk from the Green Party, Christopher Bateman, the British Democratic Party, Stephen Conley, Reform UK. The list of candidates isn't finalised yet, although the clock is ticking, and it will be published on the GBNews website when it is. And also now I've got to read you the full list of candidates from Aberdeenshire North and Moray East. So far we've got Andrew Brown, Labour, Douglas Ross, Conservatives, Ian Bailey, Lib Dems, Seamus Logan, the SNP. Again, as always, the full list of candidates will be published on our website once it is finalised. David, thank you very much again. I will talk to you again very soon, no doubt. Coming up, we do continue to remember D-Day as British parachuters drop into Normandy, just as our brave lads did 80 years ago. But you won't believe what they did after landing. Just put it this way, the French certainly weren't asking for those documents on D-Day, were they? But my panel also debate if Rishi Sunak let veterans down today by snubbing today's international ceremony with Macron and Biden. And I will also be talking with a Labour shadow minister who said some incredibly fruity stuff about both tax and healthcare. But next, Reform have gone neck and neck with the Tories now on 18%. That's in the latest YouGov poll. Oh, is Jeremy Hunt right that elections are won from the centre ground? Anne Widdecombe responds to this, the latest polling, and she's got some choice words for Stephen Fry as well. Find out why. I'll see you in a sec.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In places like News Corp, right, an organisation I know reasonably well, when that poor guy died in America,
George Floyd, you're talking about?
Yes, they had they had a 9-minute silence for him, right? A more absurd and ridiculous idea I'd never come across in my life. How do you feel about 9 minutes for George Floyd?
Well, of course, that's the length of time that he was strangled by a police
I know why it
officer.
was, but how do you feel about that?
Well, I think a lot of the black staff in particular in News Corp probably appreciated the fact that it was taking a stand. And if you look at business...
Why do they need to take a stand about what the police do in the United States
well, what
of
about
America?
the guy... What about the jeweller tonight who has died in Richmond in Surrey when two, how shall we put them, hoodlums of colour actually had a chokehold? He went home and he killed himself. There are lots of things going on in our world, as you well know, which are very upsetting. Okay. And if we're going to stop every time that somebody dies in unfortunate circumstances, we'll never get any work done.
Well, Stella, a final word to you.
I think sometimes, yes, equality and diversity can be a waste of money when it goes to things that are not necessary for the function of the organisation. But when just last year you had Birmingham Council being pushed into bankruptcy because they were found out to not have given women equal wages, then
because they paid bin men more than they paid cooks.
But then you can see Ben's point that if they had someone who was looking appropriately in equality and diversity and the actual practical policy implications of what they were doing, then maybe you wouldn't have this situation. You wouldn't have this legal liability. That's what Ben is saying. This is a multi-million pounds organisation. Like, it needs to have someone looking seriously and taking responsibility for these decisions.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that. Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News, weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, now just quickly, following my conversation with David Campbell-Bannerman, here is a full list of those who've declared their candidacy in Bury St Edmunds. Peter Princely, Labour Party, Will Tanner, Conservatives, Peter McDonald, Lib Dems, Jeremy Lee, Independents, Scott Hussey, Reform UK, Emma Buckmaster from the Green Party, oh yes, and Darren Turner from the Communist Party of Britain. Very sorry about that, but I do get shot in the back of the head if I don't read those out. Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Coming up, did Rishi Sunak let the brave D-Day veterans down by skipping an international commemoration event in Normandy this afternoon? But first, this astonishing new YouGov poll. It's revealed that the Tories and Reform are now neck and neck. Both parties 18% of the polls. Of course, Jeremy Hunt did decide to say that actually elections are won from the centre. It does beg the question as to whether or not that's true. The evidence of Britain is that elections are always won from the centre ground, he said. I wonder whether or not times have changed. I'm joined now by former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe. Anne, thank you very much. 18 points each in the polls, Anne. What do you make of that?
Yes, and the point will come, of course, as Richard Tice correctly predicted, we're going to overtake them. Reform will overtake the Conservatives. And at that point, Reform will then say, well, hang on, a vote for the Tories is a vote for Labour. The reverse of everything the Tories have been saying will become true if we overtake them. And we're obviously poised to do that. But let's look at Jeremy Hunt's comment. It's an extremely interesting one. Because I think what that implies is this, that if the Conservatives are pretty well wiped out, but there will be survivals, and if one of those survivals is Jeremy Hunt, then he is quite clearly going to take the line that there's no need to change, that there's no need to learn any lessons from this, that there's no need to learn why Reform is doing as well as it's doing, that you just carry on from the centre, as he would define it. So I think that's a pretty ill omen for the Conservatives learning any lessons from the unholy mess they've made over the last 5 years.
Do you think this Reform support can last, though, Anne?
Yes, I mean, it was very, very steady before. If you remember, it had steadied at about 14%. Very, very rarely dipped below 10. That had come from virtually nothing a couple of years ago, and it was very steady. And of course, what sent it up is Nigel Farage coming out as leader and standing for election. So yes, I think it can. Yes,
just on that though, I get that it was looking like Labour were potentially going to win the election anyway, and you know, this idea that a vote for reform is definitely a vote for a Labour government doesn't wash, and I do understand that. However, it's certainly not going to make a Labour government any less likely, is it? And if we get a Labour government, as it currently stands, we could get votes for kids, which would do more to change. Some people think this is a great idea, by the way, but it would do more to change the country than anything Tony Blair did, I think, straight away. You know, are people like Nigel Farage, people like you, comfortable with that?
No, of course not. But the fact is Labour's going to win anyway, Patrick. Just look at the polls. No poll has yet suggested that Labour is going to lose this election. And even Nigel Farage, when he was announcing his taking over of the leadership of Reform, even he said, you know, Labour have won this election. Therefore, to say, you know, that a vote for Reform is to help Keir Starmer in some way, of course it won't. He's going to win anyhow. He's going to do all those terrible things you've said.
Well, look, let's shift it on from politics a little bit. I want to talk to you about statues, actually, because the controversial British military leaders are set to be removed from Glasgow city centre amid concerns about their links to colonial atrocities. The two most controversial ones are Sir John Moore, who oversaw the capture and re-enslavement of black people in St Lucia in 1796, and Field Marshal Colin Campbell, who orchestrated the brutal crushing of the Indian uprising against the British occupation in 1858. Apparently, they're going to be put into storage, and they will not be seen again, basically. Anne, do you agree with this?
No. First of all, we've got to ask ourselves, well, why were those statues put up? They weren't put up because those people were exponents of slavery or because that they crushed one particular uprising. They were put up because both those men were extremely distinguished soldiers. Campbell, for example, was very distinguished in the balaclava. So they had terrific military records. They'd risen to high ranks, and in those days, those were exactly the sorts of people whose statues you put up. So what I would do would be simply, and there's plenty of room to do it, underneath their statue, I would put why the statue had been put up, that is their achievements, and underneath that put the caveat about the putting down of a mutiny.
OK, all right. Well, look, Anne, thank you very, very much for your time, as ever. That is the wonderful Anne Widdecombe there. We are going to have to rattle through because we're overrunning slightly on this hour, I'm afraid. So, look, we've got loads more still to come. Has Keir Starmer outperformed Rishi Sunak when it comes to the D-Day veterans issue? Rishi Sunak decided to leave early. Keir Starmer was still there with all the world's dignitaries. What was that all about? Was that a mistake? But as you'll be seeing on your screens right now, will Labour raise taxes as well? I interviewed a little earlier on Luke Pollard, who is a shadow cabinet minister for the armed forces, actually, and I asked him a bit about some astonishing leaks that emerged in The Guardian earlier, which appeared to indicate that maybe, just maybe, the Labour Party is lying to you about the amount of tax that you are going to have to pay. And he also gave me an absolutely astonishing answer when I said to him, if you had a loved one that was on an NHS waiting list, would you advise them to go private? You'll not want to miss that. Stay tuned.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your evening GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So some rain and showers around, particularly for northern areas tonight, but clear spells as well. We've still got low pressure up to the north of the UK, bringing various secluded fronts across the UK as we go throughout the rest of this evening. But looking at the detail, any showers across England and Wales will slowly fizzle out this evening, leaving plenty of clear spells. That's going to help those temperatures drop into the low single figures, and we could even see a touch of grass frost in some rural spots tonight. Across northwest Scotland, though, there's a band of heavy rain making its way southeastwards as we go into the early hours of Friday. And along with this, we will see some quite strong blustery winds. So it'll make for quite a wet commute across much of Scotland on Friday morning, with that heavy rain making its way southeastwards, feeling pretty chilly in those blustery winds as well. As we look further south, we have got some clearer skies to start the day, so some brightness, particularly further south across southeast England, but also a few showers, particularly across the southwest, and they will make their way southeastwards as we go through Friday morning. That band of rain across Scotland will also make its way southeastwards into England as we go into Friday afternoon, fizzling out a little bit and just breaking up into showers as it makes its way southeastwards, but introducing a bit more in the way of cloud into parts of England and Wales. Heavy and frequent showers, though, developing behind this across northwest Scotland. We could see a bit of hail and the odd rumble of thunder in those, but feeling pretty pleasant further south with highs of 18 to 20. Now, if we look at what this weekend has to bring, a bit more in the way of cloud to start the weekend on Saturday compared to what we're going to see on Friday morning. It's not quite as chilly a start. A few showers to start the day, but generally clearing away to the southeast into the early afternoon, and further frequent heavy showers across Scotland, and that will continue throughout the weekend, but some uncertainty as we head into the new week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We've got summer sewn up with an incredible trio of treats, and you could win them. First, there's a fabulous £15,000 in tax-free cash to ensure this summer is special. What would you spend that on? Next, you'll also receive the latest iPhone 15 and a set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction. Fun in the sun could be on us. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
they're going down in the sun, and in the morning we will remember them.
Rishi Sunak skipped a D-Day ceremony to go out campaigning. Has he let our war heroes down? And you did have a loved one who was on an NHS waiting list. Would you advise them to go private? You will not believe what that Labour Shadow Minister's answer was. Plus,
can make the commitment that income tax and national insurance won't go up under a Labour government.
yeah, I've got a bit of information for you that might suggest anyway that Labour aren't being entirely honest with you about your tax bill, and...
Come on, my sweetheart, come on, we're going to have some lunch.
We have those games with him because it enables him to speak.
Ed Davey does melt people's hearts with that. Meanwhile... Get ready, because Sir Keir Starmer is expected to make a massive policy pledge about Palestine. There are calls now as well for President Joe Biden to resign after this absolutely shambolic performance at the D-Day ceremonies. It got worse than that, by the way. On my panel this evening, is Tory peer Lord Bailey, political commentator Suzanne Evans and ex-Labour advisor Matthew Larzer. And what on earth is going on here? Get ready, Britain, here we go. Has Rishi Sunak just made a massive mistake? And can French border force do one? Next.
The latest GB News at just after 10 o'clock. And in Normandy in France today, the Duke of Cambridge has thanked D-Day veterans, saying they served for our freedom and demonstrated great heroism. Prince William was addressing senior world leaders at the international commemorative event this afternoon, paying tribute to those who took part in the biggest amphibious operation in the history of warfare. Speaking at the event held at Omaha Beach, His Majesty the King also praised the American, Canadian and British troops who landed there exactly 80 years ago today.
It is with the most profound sense of gratitude that we remember them and all those who served at that critical time. We recall the lesson that comes to us again and again across the decades. Free nations must stand together to oppose tyranny.
His Majesty the King. Well, here in the UK, hundreds of D-Day beacons have been lit tonight right across the country to honour the World War II heroes, with the first flame being lit at His Majesty's Naval Base in Portsmouth. And earlier on today, in Northern Ireland, Lisbon's town crier delivered a D-Day 80 proclamation from the historic balcony of the town's Linen Centre. And in Scunthorpe, in Lincolnshire, the Armed Forces Day flag was raised, followed by a tri-service march past. Meanwhile, the Princess Royal joined Chelsea pensioners at the Royal Chelsea Hospital in London for a special D-Day review parade. And commemorations have also taken place in Worksop in Nottinghamshire today, with military personnel laying wreaths for the fallen. Well, despite those D-Day commemorations in France today, around 80 migrants attempted to cross the English Channel this morning. Their boat got into difficulty about 10 miles off the coast of Kent, with dozens of people reported to be in the water. A rescue was launched by the Coast Guard, RNI, lifeboats and UK Border Force officials, including helicopter support. Among those brought ashore were 3 children, including a baby. It comes as new Home Office figures reveal that more than 7,500 migrants arrived in the UK by small boats in the first 4 months of this year. That's the highest level since records began. Now, almost 40 people are being treated in hospital tonight after an outbreak of E. coli, which can cause severe stomach cramps and a fever. The UK Health Security Agency says most of the cases reported across the country are part of a single outbreak, likely to be from a popular item of food, but without disclosing what that item is. Drones and helicopters were used today in a major search operation for the TV nutritionist Dr. Michael Mosley, who's gone missing on the Greek island of Symi, where he was on holiday. It's understood he'd gone out on a walk but didn't return to his accommodation. The 67-year-old is known for appearing on programmes like ITV's This Morning and the BBC's The One Show. An appeal has been launched locally, urging anyone who sees him to get in touch with local police. Sport, and Jack Grealish and James Maddison have been left out of the England squad for the Euro 2024 Championships. Manager Gareth Southgate saying he had to make some difficult decisions, trimming his list to 26 players. Harry Maguire also misses out because of an injury, but Manchester United left-back Luke Shaw, who's not played any football since mid-February, has been included. England open their campaign a week on Sunday against Serbia. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up for GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Today is the 80th anniversary of D-Day, but I am asking, Did Rishi Sunak let our war heroes down? Sunak attended events in Normandy, including speaking at the prominent British ceremony, but he left before the major gathering of world leaders with veterans at Omaha Beach so he could go home and campaign, and as it turns out as well, quite possibly just talk to ITV. This meant that Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer was left mingling with the likes of Emmanuel Macron, President Joe Biden and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz.
Today's event has been moving and powerful, and it's truly a privilege to be here on behalf of the Labour Party to give our tribute to and pay our respects to the armed services, our armed forces, and in particular to remember those involved in D-Day.
Yeah, and obviously we couldn't talk to Rishi Sunak there because he'd left. Nigel Farage made his views clear, tweeting, "The Prime Minister has ducked out of the International D-Day event to fly back to the UK to campaign. I am here in Normandy in a personal capacity because I think it matters." Does he? Well, today, the three, shall we say, more established parties used D-Day as the chance to launch veterans' policies. The Conservatives say that they would cut the cost of veterans' rail cards by a third and keep in place tax breaks for employers of veterans. Labour have committed to setting up a new commissioner to speak for members of the armed forces, which, considering they've actually already got an armed forces minister, does beg the question what his job is. But the Liberal Democrats are promising to improve Ministry of Defence housing as well. But for me, the question is this. Did Rishi Sunak make a massive mistake leaving Sir Keir Starmer to grandstand on the world stage? But more than that, did he disrespect our fallen heroes by leaving so he could campaign at this election? Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Conservative peer Lord Bailey. I've got political commentator Suzanne Evans. I have also got ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Talking of advisors, Sean, I tell you what, whoever advised Rishi Sunak to leave the International D-Day ceremony to go back and possibly speak to ITV and knock on a couple of doors wants sacking, don't they?
I'm afraid you're right. Look, there's two ways to look at this. You're in the middle of a campaign, you want to make a big impact. The best impact you could make at this point is being seen on the world stage with the biggest leaders in the world. That's probably the way to go. On top of that, you have possibly the biggest event in the last 100 years that they're celebrating. You should be there. It sends a message. It's ironic. When you listen to Nigel's message, that is probably the question that people ask themselves. And the Prime Minister could have answered that by being there. I think it was a mistake to leave.
Yeah, but I mean, there is a stark contrast between some of the now very elderly individuals that we saw there that we were all paying our respects to, you know, who were prepared in one way or the other to make the ultimate sacrifice for this country. And I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but I thought we had a Prime Minister there who, it appears to me, has put his own personal gain of what might end up being a handful of votes, if that, over being there to pay his respects for them, maybe.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I think Rishi doesn't want to win this election. And I said that as soon as he called the election. I thought, this guy's had enough. He's had the most terrible time as Prime Minister, dreadful cost of living crisis, tax burden at an 80-year high very nearly, record NHS waiting lists, failed to stop the boats, can't get any flights off to Rwanda, 20 points behind in the polls. I think he said, that's it, I'm done. I've ticked the box, I've done the top job in the country, I've made a complete hash of it, but, you know, I could go back to living the good life. And let's face it, this guy is richer than the king. He could have a very good life.
Well, you know, look, the other side of it, the other side of it is that, you know, maybe he thought that he could win a few more votes and that might keep him in a job. You know, Matthew, I will put this to you, that Rishi Sunak might have been foolish, but at least he's not lying to us. You've got Keir Starmer there, grandstanding on the world stage. He used to want to abolish the monarchy. He's been pictured with the king. And then on top of that, you've got him there talking about what a great thing, you know, the war was all of this stuff, and then saying, oh, he would have got rid of nukes, wouldn't he? Wasn't that not long ago?
No. I mean, look. I mean, Labour. I mean, you know, come on, Patrick. We shouldn't be playing politics about D-Day, and we wouldn't be if the Prime Minister hadn't just insulted not only every veteran, but also I just think the whole of our country. I mean, I'm literally astounded that this happened. Can you imagine Mrs. Thatcher doing this.
Oh, she'd never have done that.
I mean, Mrs. Thatcher in the 1987 election she was accused of, she went to Moscow in the middle of the campaign, but she was Prime Minister. She was on the world stage. And love ITV, though, we all do. The thought that you're going to not do this once in a lifetime. I mean, as you said earlier, Patrick, this is such an important anniversary because it realistically is the last anniversary of the D-Day landings you're actually going to have veterans out.
Again, I happen to agree he should have been there, but it's interesting hearing the Labour Party talk about the armed forces when I remember they've had Labour governments that didn't even have an armed forces officer. So minister. So it feels slightly disingenuous.
We've had Conservative governments.
Yeah, I think it's a new thing.
But the point I want to make, the most important thing, and this is what I'd like to see any government do, I'm disappointed that schools weren't involved in these celebrations and universities as well, because we have a young generation now who have no understanding of our history. They hate the country, and I think it's because people are not presenting them with these opportunities to understand what this country has actually done.
I mean, Suzanne, you said about Rishi wanting to lose the election. Of course, let's remind ourselves, this isn't an election imposed on Rishi. He knew that D-Day would fall in the middle, the D-Day commemorations would fall in the middle of the campaign, and yet he chose to go ahead with this date. One of the things Labour actually was against, Labour wanted an election, but not on this date, was because they knew, that the D-Day commemorations would happen in the middle.
Because they weren't ready.
We at least had the candidates in place.
Sorry, if you're the Labour Party, make your mind up. Do you want this election or not?
But I also think
for years you get it, and then you find every reason why it shouldn't.
I'm not. Well, look, we've got it, but we wouldn't have had it on this date because I think it's very, very important that as a nation we come together to commemorate. Do you remember when Michael? I mean, Suzanne and I are old enough to remember when Michael Foot turned up at Remembrance Day in what was seen as a donkey jacket, and that became a major issue. I'm astounded, actually. Good on GBNews for raising this story because the mainstream media have ignored the fact that the Prime Minister left David Cameron to be on the world stage for us.
The other thing I will say about this, which is that ITV News and Paul Brand, who's one of their political top dogs there, have put out on Twitter moments ago a clip of an interview with Rishi Sunak that, as far as I can tell, appears to have been recorded today, that I think is, from what I can gather here, is airing next week. I mean, there could be the other dimensions that Rishi Sunak may well have left those Normandy beaches there with war heroes on to go and be interviewed by the bloke who brought down Boris Johnson with the Partygate report. I mean, this is unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
My breath has literally been... I'm literally flabbergasted that he's done this.
And as I say, I just don't think he cares anymore. He's given up. He's going to pass the buck. He knows he's not going to win. He doesn't care. But what's so shocking is that he cannot even summon up half an hour to go and stay with people who are
the reason I believe he does want to win, because remember, he lost to Liz. If he could have checked out then and nobody been under wiser.
He should have left her in place.
The point is,
she'd have been a proper Prime Minister who actually cared about Britain.
He took her on, so I'm believing he has the desire. And also, he's done an awful lot of work. He has moved the economy along. He has started to run the process. He has.
He hasn't. The national debt's at 90%.
He's about to come third, Sean.
GDP. Of course. He said he'd try and cut it. He has.
Of course. He's in the middle of doing that. He's in the middle of doing that piece of work, and I believe as an individual he wants to complete that. So I do think he wants to win. And on top of all that, even if he doesn't, I can guarantee you the party wants to win. Those Conservative MPs are desperate to win.
Those Conservative MPs must be really angry tonight.
How many of them have actually quit now? Is it heading for 90?
And look, if you're a Tory MP...
final word.
If you're a Tory MP, you must be absolutely livid tonight. Every MP, no matter what party you're from, Remembrance Sunday, you put in your diary, it is the one immovable commitment of the year. It's not about party politics, and his absence has turned it into being about party politics, and he's let our country down.
If you're a Labour MP, you'd be furious at how poorly Keir Starmer did in the debate. You know what I mean?
This isn't about the debate. This is about remembering our D-Day veterans and showing respect to people without whose sacrifices we wouldn't be here having these arguments.
I hope you remember those words.
Are we diminished on the world stage because Sunak left early, do you think, Suzanne?
I think probably yes.
Yes.
OK, all right. Well, look, strong stuff. I actually really do look forward to reading your views on this. gbnews.com/your say. You can tell here that a lot of people are livid, aren't they? But look, coming up, yes, Rishi Sunak did go missing this afternoon. Joe Biden didn't.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honourable Lloyd J.
It gets worse than that for Joe Biden. Is he really going to manage an election campaign? Look, seriously now. We will tackle all of that, and tomorrow's newspapers are hot off the press. But next, as we commemorate D-Day, Labour have vowed to introduce a new armed forces czar if they get in power. So are they the party who will look after our veterans? I caught up with Shadow Armed Forces Minister Luke Pollard, who certainly thinks so. I am also asking if he's the one who's pressuring Rachel Reeves to put up taxes. There was an astonishing leak earlier about potential Labour tax hikes. There is also an even more astonishing clip from him when I ask him whether or not, if a loved one was on the NHS with a massive waiting list and in quite a bit of discomfort, he would go private. He's taken that answer to the next level. I'll see you in a sec.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Angela, what's on the menu?
Well, the menu today really is the battle between King Charles and Prince Andrew about his home, Royal Lodge. It's gone on for quite a long time now because increasingly the place looks very dilapidated. No paint, raw under the way that the whole thing's built, and it's King Charles gives him £3 million a year to have safety, and also another $1 million just to keep it going, and it costs about £400,000 a month to keep the place going.
Really?
So it is ridiculous that he's there, and I think it's like anybody. If you get to a certain age, his daughters don't stay there because they stay in London, and you get to it when you downgrade. And it's not a big deal, it's not hopeless, it's actually gives you a fresh feeling. And I think it's very silly that he won't do it, but he's determined not to, and the King is determined to, and it seems that if he doesn't listen and make all these decorations properly, that he's going to stop giving him the money, which would be very difficult indeed for him.
Because every 5 years, isn't he meant to paint the outside and all sorts of things? How he'll manage? He can move somewhere cheaper like the rest of us. I mean, £400,000 a month.
Yeah.
You could go to Frogmore Cottage, which is the offer.
Yes, exactly. That's the offer. And it's all been very decorated. Apparently Meghan did it very nicely. It's much smaller, but it's also very carefully guarded. So he should be able to do that.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, it's time for my interview with Shadow Armed Forces Minister Luke Pollard. We discussed Labour's policy issues, the big ones, I think, anyway, some of them, including taxes and the NHS. Look, we did kick off with D-Day. What we'll say is just listen carefully for a couple of things that he says when I ask him about the NHS and private health care, and just make your own minds up about this. So this is the interview. Mr. Pollard, today marks the 80th anniversary of D-Day, a vitally important date in our nation's calendar. Sir Keir Starmer stuck around for the international leaders ceremony. Rishi Sunak flew home to hit the campaign trail instead. Is that a sign, do you think, that Sir Keir thinks he's got this election in the bag?
Oh, no, absolutely not. There's no complacency from Labour in this general election. But I think it was good that Keir stayed to be there with international leaders. D-Day is a really important date in our calendar, especially the 80th anniversary, because we're running out of D-Day veterans, those people who stormed the beaches or who dropped in parachutes behind enemy lines. There's less and less of them every year. That's why it's so important, I think, for D-Day 80, that we not only remember the sacrifice and the service of those who were participating in D-Day and the Second World War, but we also tell the story to the young people for whom this seems like a very long time ago, as to why it matters, why it's so important that we remember that generation of people who served our nation, and why we should tell their story and how important freedom and liberty is today.
No, absolutely. Well, a lot of the parties, including your own, took the opportunity on D-Day to announce veterans or armed forces policies. As I understand it, Labour is committed to setting up a new commissioner to speak for members of the armed forces. With respect, isn't that your job? And also, is there a bit of a trust issue when the last Labour government issued letters of comfort to the IRA and did also pursue historic prosecutions against some of our own armed forces?
No, I think it's really important that we have an independent voice for our armed forces. We've seen over the last 14 years that morale is falling. We now have huge problems with retention and recruitment. And that's why we want to tackle that with an independent person able to inspect military facilities, deal with complaints, to listen to those who serve and, importantly, their families, and to investigate things like kit, the poor state of military housing, and then report directly to Parliament, not to ministers. We want to increase accountability because our armed forces are the best in the world. But frankly, the system and support they're getting at the moment isn't up to scratch. That's why we not only want to increase defence spending to 2.5% and give our troops the equipment they need to defend and deter any aggression, but we also want to make sure that we're renewing the contract between those who serve and the nation that's been so eroded over the last 14 years.
OK, all right. Now, sources have told The Guardian today that Labour shadow cabinet ministers are calling for Rachel Reeves to raise capital gains tax to fund some of your policies. Are you one of those people?
No, Labour's been quite clear, and Rachel's been very clear on this, that we have no plans to raise income tax, national insurance or VAT. There are certain areas where we have already set out where we want to change the tax rates to support public spending, such as closing the loophole on private schools to support our state school sector, hiring 6,500 new teachers and making sure we're getting mental health support for kids in secondary school in particular. We've been very clear about where there will be a tax change, but I'm afraid the scaremongering that we're seeing from the government over the last few days is not consistent with what Labour policy actually is.
So you don't want to raise capital gains tax then?
No, Rachel Reeves will set out all the tax changes if we get elected in the budget, but we've been very clear that except in the circumstances that we've already set out, and that will be in our manifesto in the next few days.
Because there are some concerns. There are some concerns about that, because there's another source that's also leaked to The Guardian, which says that Rachel Reeves is planning what's called a kitchen sink tactic, which is that if you guys are elected, and it's looking that way at the moment, that she will have a look at the finances, say that they're in much worse shape than she ever imagined, and then lob a load of tax hikes out there in one go. I mean, she's been rumbled there, hasn't she, really?
Well, I haven't seen these leaks that you're commenting on here, but I think one thing about your question is right. We are potentially, if we win this general election, inheriting a really poor set of public finances. We're inheriting public services that are on their knees. Everything seems broken. That's something I hear on the doors when I'm out canvassing quite frequently. That's why we've set out clearly what we can do and where the money is coming from to pay for it. So I think trust in politics is really through the floor, and big promises of big spending, I don't think will wash with the public. That's why we've been careful not to make any unfunded spending commitments. We've had £71 billion of unfunded spending commitments from the Prime Minister, but we're not doing that. We're saying clearly, we're making changes here and it'll be paid for by this. And that, I think, is the right approach to win trust of people in this general election.
OK, now, look, just one last one with you. If you did have a loved one who was on an NHS waiting list, would you advise them to go private?
No, I believe in the National Health Service. I always have. In every job that I've had, if it came with private health care cover. I've asked to be opted out of it. I believe in the National Health Service because I believe you should be treated about your health, not about how much money is in your pocket.
I do just want to emphasise that because I just want to make sure I didn't mishear that. So if you had a private healthcare policy through another job, right, you would ask to opt out of that private health. So you conceivably for yourself would rather spend a year on an NHS waiting list, waiting for a lump or a bump to be checked, than go private and get that looked at next week?
No, I support the National Health Service. And indeed, I've had a lump and a bump checked out in the last year. I've had skin cancer on my face just here. And the National Health Service not only identified it, but they treated me with it. Superb NHS staff working their socks off. That's one of the reasons why, as a party, we're setting out we need to take down that 8 million people that are on that NHS waiting list by 40,000 extra weekend and evening appointments every week. It will take an entire parliament 5 years to wear down that incredibly high waiting list that are getting worse and worse under the Conservatives. But I believe in the National Health Service. I believe that you should get your healthcare at your point of need, not about how much money you have in your pocket. And that, I think, will support everyone be able to get the healthcare that they deserve.
Do you think that for some people it's not offensive to NHS staff that they might want to go private? It's that people have at times had quite poor care on the NHS, or it's taken far too long for them to get that care, and that because they do actually love a relative and they can maybe afford to, they might go private. And do you think it's maybe offensive to people who do that to be saying some of the things that you've said there?
No, I believe in the NHS. I believe that we've got a choice in this country about how you want to provide your healthcare. I think everyone should have access to a decent National Health Service in their area, not only for a big hospital with big cancer services like we've just discussed, but to make sure they can access a GP and an NHS dentist. And primary care, NHS dentistry is on its knees under this government. That's why we've also set out plans to rescue NHS dentistry with more appointments and more dentists, and make it easier for people to see a GP. Because at every stage of our NHS journey here, there's a real crisis. It's not because people in the NHS aren't working their socks off. They really are. It's that there hasn't been the investment or the thought that's gone into this by ministers.
All right, Luke, thank you very, very much. It's been great to have you on the show. That's Mr. Luke Pollard there, who's the Shadow Minister for the Armed Forces. Thank you for your time today. Really do appreciate it. OK, two things. Do you believe that if a relative was dying, that he would still say, no, you've got to go on the NHS? The second thing is, I do wonder whether or not a lot of Labour politicians seem to be having a very different experience on the NHS to what many of our viewers and listeners have. And I would like your views on that. gbviews at gbnews.com. Coming up, Ed Davey is rightly lauded for his moving campaign video about caring for his son.
Come on, my sweetheart. Come on. We're going to have some lunch. We have those games with him because it enables him to speak.
Yes, I will show you that clip soon. But next, my press pack join me. Why? Well, I've got the very first of tomorrow's front pages, and I think if I get going now, I'll have them before anyone else, so stay tuned.
Hello and welcome to your evening GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So some rain and showers around, particularly for northern areas tonight, but clear spells as well. We've still got low pressure up to the north of the UK, bringing various occluded fronts across the UK as we go throughout the rest of this evening. But looking at the detail, any showers across England and Wales will slowly fizzle out this evening, leaving plenty of clear spells. That's going to help those temperatures drop into the low single figures, and we could even see a touch of grass frost in some rural spots tonight. Across northwest Scotland, though, there's a band of heavy rain making its way southeastwards as we go into the early hours of Friday. And along with this, we will see some quite strong blustery winds. So it'll make for quite a wet commute across much of Scotland on Friday morning, with that heavy rain making its way southeastwards, feeling pretty chilly in those blustery winds as well. As we look further south, we have got some clearer skies to start the day, so some brightness, particularly further south across southeast England, but also a few showers, particularly across the southwest, and they will make their way southeastwards as we go through Friday morning. That band of rain across Scotland will also make its way southeastwards into England as we go into Friday afternoon, fizzling out a little bit and just breaking up into showers as it makes its way southeastwards, but introducing a bit more in the way of cloud into parts of England and Wales. Heavy and frequent showers, though, developing behind this across northwest Scotland. We could see a bit of hail and the odd rumble of thunder in those, but feeling pretty pleasant further south with highs of 18 to 20. Now, if we look at what this weekend has to bring, a bit more in the way of cloud to start the weekend on Saturday compared to what we're going to see on Friday morning. It's not quite as chilly a start. A few showers to start the day, but generally clearing away to the southeast into the early afternoon, and further frequent heavy showers across Scotland, and that will continue throughout the weekend, but some uncertainty as we head into the new week.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akweer. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I have got tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you. Let's do it. Starting with the Daily Mail. Male health guru Michael Mosley missing in Greece. Huge search for columnist who vanished on a holiday island walk. Yeah, look, very odd this. Michael Mosley has vanished during a walk on a Greek island. Apparently, they think he may have slipped, tripped or fallen whilst hiking alone in the heat. There is the picture story there, a salute and a prayer for the fallen. That is D-Day related. Let's go over to The Guardian. Pressure on Tories to return £15 million worth of donations after new Hester claims. Hester is the donor, I believe, who made some remarks about Diane Abbott, I think, didn't he, a while ago. There's a story here which we'll delve into as well. Starmer to push for a Palestinian state. We've got more detail on this, but from what we can gather so far, it looks as though Keir Starmer is going to advocate for the recognition of a definitive Palestinian state before the end of any peace talks between Israel and Hamas. So there we go. Let's go to the Metro. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. The 80th anniversary of D-Day, with a very poignant photograph there, shot from behind, out to sea, of some members of our armed forces, or possibly veterans, actually. Let's go to the Daily Express. They did not flinch, and this is a historic photograph of the D-Day landings. King praises D-Day heroes' bravery and sacrifice when moment came to face that test. Let's go to the Times. Biden, D-Day lessons still needed today. By the way, I will be playing you some absolutely astonishing footage of Joe Biden out there. Unbelievable. I'm not sure that man can really run again. Green anti-Semitism storm. Candidates shared offensive material online. Individuals blamed Israel for October the 7th. Party says the allegations are serious. Yes, so the Green Party general election candidates have shared slurs, anti-Semitic and conspiracy theories, backed pro-Palestinian protests at Auschwitz and given justifications for the October the 7th attacks. Last night, Green Party officials were examining a dossier featuring nearly 20 of their candidates. That is a big story. We will be having a look at that. I've got the Daily Telegraph. In the footsteps of heroes, they've got there, which is a picture of some individuals there walking in from the sea onto the beaches at Normandy. And again, that story, Keir Starmer pledging the recognition for a Palestinian state in the Labour manifesto, reportedly. Right, OK, I am here again with my wonderful panel. It's Conservative peer Lord Bailey, political commentator Suzanne Evans and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. I'll focus on this Starmer story. OK, so Starmer is pledging recognition for Palestinian state in manifesto. I'll give you a bit more detail on this and I'll come to you, Sean. So the party is expected to include a specific pledge on Gaza, it reads, in the document in a move that will assuage left-wing MPs, but is expected to anger the Israeli government. According to multiple reports, the dossier will state a neighbouring country, a likely reference to Israel, must not have a veto over granting a Palestinian statehood. Sean, what do you think of this?
I think this is really dangerous. I'm astonished that Keir Starmer's taken his own electoral well-being over the well-being of the Palestinian people and Israeli people. Many of us, I believe in a two-state solution. I think that's our official position of our government. To put something in your manifesto that may make that harder to achieve, I think is selfish and reckless beyond all measure. That is one of the most painful points of our international existence, and to treat it like that, I think is risky. This could be something in 5, 10, 15 years' time that's pointed to as to why we have not solved this.
One of the issues, amongst others, by the way, with a quote-unquote Palestinian state is that the latest polling, especially out of the West Bank, appears to show that support for Hamas is going up. And as Salman Rushdie said, a Palestinian state, a quote-unquote free Palestine, would be a terror state. So does Keir Starmer want to create a terror state in the Middle East?
Well, I think this is what it's looking at. I mean, to come up with this policy when you've still got hostages in custody, I don't know what he's... Well, I know exactly what he's thinking. You hit the nail on the head, Sean. It's a politicisation. He knows that the left is split on this, and he's trying to pull back in those voters who might otherwise go to independent candidates who are standing specifically on a Gaza ticket. So this is pure politicisation. And I agree with Sean, it's very, very dangerous. It might be something that has to be done, as you say, down the line, like we did in Northern Ireland. I mean, obviously, this is not a state, but, you know, you have to talk to terrorists eventually. But to do it now, while there's still hostages there, in the context of a general election, is very, very wrong.
But
very wrong.
Conceivably, I mean, look, I've given up a little bit on the Tories doing a lot right at this election campaign. However, they could now potentially say a vote for Sir Keir Starmer is the vote for the creation of a Middle Eastern terror state.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what's absolutely key in this is that it's in the context of a peace process. The Labour government was ready to recognise a Palestinian state when there is a viable Palestinian state that's going to come out of a new next line of a peace process. And goodness knows we need that peace process to revive. What this is not saying is doing what countries like Spain and Norway have done in the last couple of weeks, which is recognise a Palestinian state now, which is an incendiary thing to do. Instead, is saying that it will be part of a peace process.
But this does say before the end of any peace.
Well, yeah, as part of it, yes.
No. It says before the end of.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Significantly adjusts any negotiation. That strikes me as incredibly risky and selfish.
But you know, I mean, you said, you know, I agree with you, Sean. I'm a two-state solution person. I think everybody who's sensible is. I mean, one of the things we need to do is we need to give the Palestinian Authority, which runs the West Bank, support so that it can help defeat Hamas.
Just quickly,
but that isn't the way to do it.
It is Hamas.
Not in the way. The Palestinian Authority has its issues, but it's not Hamas.
Can I just draw our attention very briefly as well to the front of the Times, the Green anti-Semitism storm. Candidates shared offensive material online. The Green Party now, shock horror, the party that somehow managed to let somebody who shouted Allahu Akbar after being elected to a local election somewhere around Greater Manchester.
Leeds.
Sorry, people of Greater Manchester. You've got some other interesting characters there. But, the shock horror. It turns out that actually apparently nearly 20 of them have allegedly been saying stuff like, anti-Semitic slurs and even backed pro-Palestinian protests at Auschwitz, Suzanne. I mean, what has happened to the Green Party?
I mean, you'd have to be nuts, I think, to actually go anywhere near the Green Party. Anyway, if you read their manifesto, everybody thinks they're lovely, light and fluffy green environmentalists. Absolutely not. They're what's called the Watermelon Party. You know, nice and green on the outside and blood red in the middle, hard socialist, communist.
I think what's really...
It encourages these kind of people to join them.
They're now at 10%. They're actually ahead of the Lib Dems. The Lib Dems are fifth in some polls. So I think you're going to see more scrutiny in the run-up to the campaign.
Very quick.
The important thing is I want to see the Green Party treat these people as it always tells other political parties to treat their members who stepped out. I want to see these people expelled. If not, the Greens are hypocrites.
Absolutely,
Right. OK, we will kick on because dithery Joe Biden couldn't even keep up good appearances on D-Day. Here he is trying to sit down on what appears to be an invisible chair, or, frankly, who knows what. Watch.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honourable Lloyd J.
And then later his wife escorts him away as Emmanuel Macron stays behind to greet the veterans. I wonder why that was. I'm sorry, but this is actually beyond a joke. It's beyond a joke. Like, you say what you like about Trump, can that bloke seriously be in charge of essentially the free world for another 4 years?
No.
It's mad. But I've got to press on with this, because our troops were sent to parachute into Normandy yesterday to recreate the historic moment from 80 years ago where hundreds landed in the same drop zone. But after a heartwarming moment full of pride, as soon as they touched down, they were suddenly met with passport control set up in the field by the French border officials. Of course, the irony is that France only had control of its borders because of a similar arrival in 80 years ago.
Yeah,
I don't think they were asking to see our passports then, were they? And on top of it all, it was reported that the US and Belgian troops didn't face the same passport checks. I'm sorry, but this is absolute. I mean, that is actually really offensive.
The Belgians are in the Schengen Agreement. They don't have to.
Well, I'm sorry, but
That's
come
offensive.
on. It's offensive.
It's awful, yes, of
On
course
any
it is.
day to make a protest, fine, but we effectively freed them from Nazi tyranny.
Do you know
That's
what?
disgraceful.
I see this slightly differently, because now, of course, when you go to France, you get a stamp in your passport. I think it'd be quite nice to have a stamp in your passport on the anniversary.
Not when you parachuted in remembrance of when we stepped up and saved France from Nazi tyranny.
And I have to say, I thought Macron spoke really movingly today in English, and the King spoke in French. And this is a shame, because it's a stain on what was otherwise a really beautiful day of coming together.
I actually, seriously, I think that's really offensive.
It's offensive.
Especially when you consider that the French today let however many hundred people across the Channel, it appears.
Well, that's
You've got to draw the parallel there. I think they don't appear to care too much about border security there. It's really wound me up, that, as you can tell. Anyway, right. You will see at the bottom of your screen there, gbnews.com/your say. And we've brought this up because apparently there has been an absolutely massive reaction to that interview that I did with Labour's Shadow Armed Forces Minister Luke Pollard. I asked him about whether or not a loved one on the NHS waiting list, he would ever advise him to go private. I asked him a bit more as well. He said no. He also said that if he had private insurance at a company, he would have to be removed from it. David says, how did Luke Pollard get seen so fast on the NHS, he wonders. He made a reference to his skin cancer, didn't he? Stuart said, if your loved one was waiting and you could pay to go private to be seen sooner, you would and everyone would. Colin says, I believe in the NHS. It's no reflection on the NHS, but if a family member is in pain and needs a new knee and can't get the operation for 18 months on the NHS, we would all go private if we could. And Matthew, I'll bring you in on this. This is ideology above common sense and above healthcare. I would argue that it's quite dangerous. Has the Labour mask slipped a bit here?
Well, I don't think it's the Labour mask has slipped. I think it's a personal decision that everybody has to make. I personally disagree with this kind of rather, po-faced... I mean, po-faced is not quite the right word, but this attitude. I think that you should put your family before the NHS. What I think Keir should have said in the debate was, we want an NHS that's good enough. People don't feel they have to go private. Yeah. But obviously there are circumstances when you can forgive anybody for going private. So I think what he said was a mistake politically. And also, it does make you feel that he's a bit it wasn't a good moment.
No, one thing I will say is watch out for this line throughout the rest of the election now. Mark my words. Whenever you ask a Labour politician about the NHS and going private, what they will say is, I support the NHS, they work very hard. That's not what we're asking, is it? We're asking whether or not, if you had a loved one, seriously now, on an NHS waiting list, all getting bad care or they lose their nose, would you or would you not go private? It's got nothing to do with how hard you think NHS staff work. But, sorry, coming up. Can men get can men get cancer in their ovaries? Yeah, we are asking that, despite the obvious answer. We debate that because that is apparently the latest trans madness. That's in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But next, Tory ministers Mel Strine and Gillian Keegan star in their own version of Gogglebox.
Sunak versus Starmer, the ITV debate.
He looks better, his shirt's been ironed.
All right, more of that coming up in the rest of tomorrow's newspaper pages. I'll see you in a sec.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
D-Day was shrouded in secrecy. Ken Hay was days away from landing in Normandy and still didn't know what was happening.
I don't think we really appreciated what we were going into. Actually, on D-Day, I was on a 30-mile route march, and we see the planes going over and that sort of thing. And we realised that wherever they were going, then we got the news that, in fact, it was Normandy, and we knew we were scheduled for that.
He arrived on Juno Beach at Coursieux-sur-Mer a few days after the main assault. The soldiers' role was to push forward into enemy territory.
I didn't land on D-Day. I landed shortly after in June. I was in the infantry, so I was a rifle and I was up the front.
While on night patrol on July 7th, his unit was attacked.
My brother was a corporal in the same platoon, and he was out with me. He got back. 16 of us out of 30 got back. 5 of us got captured, and 9 got killed.
Germans put him to work in a POW camp in Zabas, Poland. With Soviets advancing, the prisoners were forced to march for 1,000 miles.
At one point along there, my leg was chopped. I lay down in the snow. If it hadn't been for 2 guys who fell back in the column and picked me up, I'd have just gone to sleep and frozen to death. 2 American tanks turned up on the 22nd of April, Sunday afternoon, and we were liberated.
Ken feels pride for the role he played in Normandy and thanks God for keeping him alive.
People say, why did you volunteer for the services? It was a completely different atmosphere then. You did your bit.
The People's Channel.
Okay, hello and welcome back to what is turning into the liveliest paper review we've possibly ever done. I've got more front pages for you now. Right, I'm starting with The Sun. They have a D-Day special on their front page. It's almost impossible to grasp the courage it would have taken to run into the fury of battle that day. So that is a quote from Prince William's salute to our heroes. They've also got a moving tribute there from the King. Our armed forces carried out their duty with resolve and determination. Very many never came home, yes. Let's go to the Eye now. Interesting front pages on the Eye. Reform surges again as new polls show the Farage effect. Right-wing insurgent, they're not called it far-right, that's nice. Right-wing insurgent party has climbed 5 points in a week since Nigel announced that he will stand. Reform UK leader is expected a TV boost, they say tonight, this is of course tomorrow, when he takes part in a 7-way live debate hosted by the BBC. So Farage and the other 6 other leaders will be live on a TV debate tomorrow. So, yes, there you go. Right, OK, I'm joined again by my press pack. We've got Conservative peer Lord Bailey, political commentator Suzanne Evans, former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Well, the Farage effect appears to be quite real. It appears to be happening, Suzanne.
Yeah, absolutely. So the leaders' debate when Farage is taking part, please, Nigel, don't say anything ridiculously controversial. Just focus on the facts. You've got enough good policies behind you and enough to say without, you know, making some bizarre comment that then hits the front pages.
He's on with... So who's he actually on with?
Angela Rayner. For us.
Angela Rayner, Penny Mordaunt?
I think
yes.
it's Penny Mordaunt.
I think it's Penny Mordaunt.
It's not the Deputy Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden.
Penny Mordaunt will win the debate. She's super quick on her feet. The one challenge for Nigel, though, is to defeat the Tories and Labour. That's going to be tricky.
I just wonder, I wonder if the pressure's more on the Conservatives there, because if Penny Mordaunt comes out really... If she's vicious to Nigel Farage, does that not just really wind up Tory voters?
She won't be vicious to anyone. I don't know if you've watched her before.
I mean, she is very good.
Yeah, if you've watched her at the box, she is very quick-witted and she knows her stuff and she believes her stuff.
And
She'll
very
be
charming, actually.
she'll be hard to defeat in that.
Do you know what? It will actually be rather a human debate with Angela Rayner there, Nigel, and with Penny Mordaunt. They're actually slightly more likeable, arguably. They're more people you want to have a drink with than the two others, the two leaders.
Nigel and Penny are.
Okay.
Oh, come on, Sean. I was being nice about Penny.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But yes, so there are multiple different polls out today. The YouGov one showed that the Tories and Reform were neck and neck on 18 points. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, I suppose. Depends on which one you go for. The Eye have got one of the Reform at the highest level. They say on 16, and the Tories still on 23, which is actually more generous than quite a lot of the others I saw today. But anyway, look, I'm moving on now. Ed Davey's been doing, you know, some bizarre, ridiculous, at times kind of comically awful campaign stunts, hasn't he? But this is different, I will say. And we're showing you the others, so I thought I'd show you this one. Ed Davey has taken a pause from water sliding, drum bashing and doing all of that stuff to actually release a heartwarming video of him caring for his disabled son. Shall we have a look?
Come on, my sweetheart, come on, we're gonna have some lunch. We have those games with him because it enables him to speak and to practice communicating. It's a tough job caring, but family carers who do the vast bulk of caring. Governments have just ignored them, just not listened to them. As I've got older and had all those caring responsibilities, seen life through the eyes of my son, could not be more passionate and determined to sort out caring in this country.
Yeah, it's moving when you see someone like that in their own home with their own personal issues, whatever you may think of their policies or anything like that. But look, the Tories have pulled out a Gogglebox gag as they plonked on the sofa their Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, and their Work and Pensions Secretary, Mel Stride, to watch Sunak versus Starmer. Shall we have a little look at how they got on?
We're live in Salford for the very first time in this election. It's Sunak versus Starmer, the ITV debate.
He looks better, his shirt's been ironed.
Yeah, that's a good start, isn't it?
Big problem with Liz Truss is that she...
Why are you talking about Liz Truss? Talk about yourself.
Liz Truss. We're talking about the general election.
Well, who's in charge? Who's in charge?
What, of the whole world?
What's your solution?
In Germany? Is it too high in France? Yeah,
it's rocketing across Europe, in Italy.
Is that the Prime Minister's fault as well?
I mean, I quite liked that.
They're auditioning because they're going to lose their seats and they're auditioning for Gogglebox.
Right, OK. Right, it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain Union jackass. I am starting with Sean. Sean, who's your greatest Britain?
My greatest Britain is General Sir Bernard Montgomery, who in 1944, on 6th of June, led the greatest amphibious action of any army in the world. Of course, we're talking about D-Day. He's one of our great heroes, great piece of organisation and really brave people, young men and women. But I want this to be celebrated in universities and schools because they are the people who least believe in the country and it's because they don't know what has been done for them.
54% of 18 to 24-year-olds don't think Israel should exist, so that's where we are, unfortunately. Suzanne?
Well, I think there's only one thing I can say on the anniversary of D-Day, and that is the armed forces in general, past, present, future. Thank you.
Yeah, very well said. Go on.
And, you know, I mean, obviously, I agree with both of those. But mine is Dr. Michael Mosley, who's helped so many people through his health and nutrition advice and sadly is currently missing in a Greek island.
Yeah, very odd story, that. I don't want to, you know... can't really dwell on that, but yeah, he is missing on the Greek islands, and hopefully he's all right. Well, today's winner, I've gone for Monty, but really, you know, it's the armed forces. It's that genre of people on today, the 80th. Commemoration of D-Day. Right, OK, it is Union Jackass time now.
My Union Jackass is the French border officials, the custom officials who...
I thought you were going to stop on the French.
No, when our troops parachuted in to celebrate the freedom that we delivered mainly for the French at that point, to make them have to check their passports is offensive in the extreme. And if the French wanted to make some kind of point, today was not the day. Our boys, Canadian boys, Australian boys, boys and girls from around the world died to free them in that instance, and they do this. It's disgraceful. I actually think they should apologise.
It's unbelievable for them to make that claim that they care about border security when today 80 Channel migrants were capsized in the Channel. There was tear gas used on the beach. You've got goodness knows what coming in through the other side of France. Absolutely disgraceful, a complete joke. Anyway, yeah, sorry. I'm not...
Say what you think.
Sorry, actually. Go on, Suzanne.
So it's ovarian cancer action. Now, normally these would be my greatest Britons, but not today, because they decided to do this daft publicity stunt and ask the question, can men get ovarian cancer? And basically gave the answer, yes, anyone of any gender can get it. Well, no, you can't.
That winds me up as well. I'm going to leave it seething tonight after...
I know, you're not going to sleep well tonight, Patrick.
OK, good, go on.
Mine is outgoing BT boss Philip Janssen, whose 3.7 final pay deal hits just as the group gets rid of 55,000 jobs and keeps us all hanging on when we try and get our broadband fixed.
Really? Is that the corporate world does sound lovely, just in cases. Anyway, right, OK, I've gone for the French border force. I have. I mean, it really got me, this. It really...
I'm outraged. I'm outraged.
They're laughing at this, by the way. The French Border Force is going to clip this, and they are currently laughing at it.
But they shouldn't, because that was a real point of unity. We stopped the Second World War practically in that moment. The French were involved. We freed the French, and that's how they're...
Can I say, you said about Biden, at least Biden turned up, unlike Vichy.
OK, all right. And on that bombshell, thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. I will see you very, very soon. It's Headliners next. Have a great evening.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to your evening GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So some rain and showers around, particularly for northern areas tonight, but clear spells as well. We've still got low pressure up to the north of the UK, bringing various occluded fronts across the UK as we go throughout the rest of this evening. But looking at the detail, any showers across England and Wales will slowly fizzle out this evening, leaving plenty of clear spells. That's going to help those temperatures drop into the low single figures, and we could even see a touch of grass frost in some rural spots tonight. Across northwest Scotland, though, there's a band of heavy rain making its way southeastwards as we go into the early hours of Friday. And along with this, we will see some quite strong blustery winds. So it'll make for quite a wet commute across much of Scotland on Friday morning, with that heavy rain making its way southeastwards, feeling pretty chilly in those blustery winds as well. As we look further south, we have got some clearer skies to start the day, so some brightness, particularly further south across southeast England, but also a few showers, particularly across the southwest, and they will make their way southeastwards as we go through Friday morning. That band of rain across Scotland will also make its way southeastwards into England as we go into Friday afternoon, fizzling out a little bit and just breaking up into showers as it makes its way southeastwards, but introducing a bit more in the way of cloud into parts of England and Wales. Heavy and frequent showers, though, developing behind this across northwest Scotland. We could see a bit of hail and the odd rumble of thunder in those, but feeling pretty pleasant further south with highs of 18 to 20. Now, if we look at what this weekend has to bring, a bit more in the way of cloud to start the weekend on Saturday compared to what we're going to see on Friday morning.
It's the Great British Summer Giveaway, and have we got a prize for you? There's a totally tax-free £15,000 in cash to make your summer spectacular. Spend that extra cash however you like. You'll also win a brand new iPhone, Apple AirPods, and if that wasn't enough, a £500 voucher to spend at your favourite UK attraction, so you can enjoy amazing days out this year. For a chance to win the iPhone, treats, and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
I've got a grade 3 astrocytoma brain tumour. Once I was diagnosed, I tried to do my claim with my insurance company and was rejected. They then also cancelled my life insurance and also cancelled my wife's policies as well.
And this is Zurich Insurance, John.
This is Zurich,
and their point